Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, the Corvette is actually on the ground this time, but did want to show you kind of what's going on with this car. As you guys can see, the car is 99% back together. You might be wondering, well, what's going on? Why is it still not, back together? Well, basically why it's not done is because when I was putting in the fuel line going from the driver's side fuel rail, it's back under there, and it loops around to the back of the fuel pressure regulator from Holley. What happened was I accidentally hit the alternator hot wire, if you want to call that, and the fuel line went up in smoke. I mean, it didn't start a fire or anything, but it definitely got hot and burnt up a little bit. So to help prevent that from happening in the future, I've wrapped the hot wire in our expensive German tape. Then I put a little vacuum port on top of the 13mm bolt. So I actually tried to prevent this from happening, and I bought one of those alternator. It was a Dorman part number. I don't remember. I think it's called alternator, plug, boot, something like that. I put it on, and the thing was actually too small for that nut that holds all the power cords together. So unfortunately, that thing ripped, and it led to a exposed circuit, and that's kind of what caused our fuel line to get melted. And here, guys, here is the fuel line. This is the worst part of it. That's actually from an earlier incident. And this was the big one. And yeah, as you guys can see, that really screwed up the stainless braided line. And yeah. So basically, this PTFE hose is now worthless. Now, I did put water in it. It did hold water. But honestly, guys, with fuel, fire, and all that stuff, it's just easier to buy a new line. And so thankfully, I kind of torched that line before Christmas. I ordered the line Tuesday, and it should be here later today. So if that line gets here, we're going to fire this thing up. So basically, we're going to take this car, put it out in the driveway, and just make sure everything's running properly. We've got fuel modifications. We've got coolant modifications. We've got ventilation modifications with the PCV system and that breather box and all that stuff. So we've got a lot of stuff to get figured out. And I actually still am waiting on some fittings for the car, so it won't be 100% done, but we're at that point to where, we can back the car out and make sure everything is going to work the way it's supposed to. So then once those parts come in, we can finally finish the car. All right, guys, so we actually got that replacement fuel line in, and I just finished installing it. Let's show you what we did. You guys can see that blue fitting there in the back that's going up, under, around, and I'm not sure if you guys can see that. Maybe? Yeah, you see the other blue end fitting down there. Now, when I ordered that line, I did not realize that I'd ordered the aluminum fitting versus the steel fitting. That kind of sucks, but that's all right. I've got one blue fitting under the hood. If it really bothers me, I can just use a Sharpie marker. I kid you not, guys, I've used Sharpie on to touch up black anodized fittings before. So just, some black Sharpie marker on that, we could fix that up. I'm not sure if I care. It's kind of whatever. And to be honest, it's really hard to see anyway. It's back behind the regulator. So that's not a bigger deal, but now that we've got that fuel line installed, we've also finished up the coolant hoses. They're right here and right here, so that's all reattached. Alright guys, now that you've seen the first fire up, you know that the car is in running condition. We have a bunch of check engine lights, the ABS, the service anti-lock brakes, service active handling is on. I have not finished bleeding the brakes from the 15-inch brake install, so I'm not going to worry about that at this point. We still have a whole bunch of other stuff to get done before we start worrying about that. So we'll get those brakes bled, and we will also refill the coolant. I put whatever was in our jug. It probably was about 2 gallons of coolant in it. I probably need like a 1/3 gallon to put in there. I'm not exactly sure how much coolant we need to add back in here, but we'll, you know, let the system get hot, let it bleed off, add coolant. You know how that goes, and we'll get that done. And we're also going to need to service the supercharger coolant itself, because I'm sure we lost some, you know, putting the supercharger off the car. I need to check the coolant tank back in the corner. And so there's just a lot of little maintenance items, like bleeding the brakes, bleeding the coolant, adding coolant to the supercharger, all that stuff. There's just a lot of little work that we got to get done before we finish the car. And also, we need to reinstall this driver's side fender. We've gotten the fittings all tightened down for the catch can, the breather from Pro Speed, and we're still waiting on those fittings, kind of like I mentioned earlier, but that should be it. Now, we actually did run into one problem. The fitting on the back of the fuel rail actually got loose, connecting the ethanol flex fuel sensor into the fuel rail up here. And I'm not sure if you guys can see that fitting, but way back there, kind of underneath the firewall, that fitting popped loose. So I was smelling fuel. I'm actually still smelling fuel. But, you know, so when I backed it out initially out of the garage, I was like, oh crap, I was smelling fuel. So I shut the car off, started looking at it, and I just fixed that. And how we fixed that was by actually disconnecting the main fuel line here. Then we remove the fuel sensor, the flex fuel sensor, and then we also remove this Y block right here. We remove that. And that allowed us to get enough room back behind the fuel rail to tighten that fitting up. So we should be good. That's all tight. Really the only other thing I noticed was when I fired up, I saw a bunch of smoke. It smelled like stuff burning, but I think that just must have been crap that got on the headers. But now that we've started the car a few times, I'm not smelling anymore, and I don't see anything smoking. So I think that was just garbage burning off the headers. So that's pretty much it. So I think the next video is actually going to be finishing up the breather install. You guys can see the hose is just sitting here. The one on the passenger side is also sitting there. We need to get the proper fittings for the valve covers. And once we get those, we'll show you how we install those and take the car all back apart. And if you guys want to see that video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you guys want to know when I upload new content, make sure you turn on your bell notifications. And if you guys want to help support the channel, click all the links down below and make sure you check our website, BonecrrusherSS.com. Thanks, guys. Have a great one.